one thing this has given such a wonderful opportunity to think about how far our lives have been on a progression, how far we've moved back and haven't really moved on since 1997. When I spoke at the conference in Cardiff in 97, I spoke on rape, but I also spoke on Athena in relationship to rape, so it's interesting you highlighted that. And this is our mascot for today, it's Lego Athena. Okay, right? So she will, rather angry, furious Lego Athena can watch over us and everything we're going to be talking about. I haven't brought along a PowerPoint presentation. Instead, I brought along various props, which I will hold up at various points during this introduction. Let me say first that I'm so happy to be introducing this event. I'm honoured too, and really, I was moved anyway, and now I'm all the more moved thanks to what Mike said. And I'm really, really happy to be welcoming you here. I hope you have time to explore our campus. This bit is a bit of a building site. We are soon going to be getting a really nice new library, but that's still being finished. But if you head over in that direction, you'll see rather nice Georgian lakes after Capability Brown and so on. So there are nicer parts of campus if you want a bit of time to explore. What I want to do is say some things about how this event came about. And also I very much want to link that to the event that took place, well, longer ago than 20 years. The book came out in 1997. That itself grew out of a conference at what is now Cardiff University. It had a different name then, it was still part of the University of Wales, back in 2004. No, 1994. Sorry, I keep doing that. Wow, I keep being a decade out. Well, what's 10 years between friends? And that itself grew out of a smaller scale event organised by Karen, myself and other postgraduates at the University of Wales in what must have been summer 1993. Okay, so a long journey here. So I want to talk about I want to talk about the original event. I want to talk about what's happened in the intervening 20 plus years. And also I want to think about how all this can lead into what we're going to be exploring over the next couple of days and how, in what ways we can take the subject, whatever exactly the subject is, forward. There are several things that stimulated us to organise this event. There are lots of them, and I just want to highlight a few right now. One of these took place in 2014. Yeah, I'm right, that's 2014. To be exact, in November 2014, on November the 19th, 2014, because on the wall in my office, just sort of up the hill here, I put up the poster from the original event. Bear in mind, this was put together in days before, technological developments as they now are. And this is it. This is the poster. This is the first of my props. Okay, the poster from the original event. So this was the original event that Karen and I organised in Cardiff at the University of Wales College of Cardiff, November the 19th, 1994. And when I was walking past it one day, when I was getting ready for teaching, etc., I realised that it was 20 years ago to the day that the conference had taken place. And I didn't really know quite what to do with this. It felt such a big moment. There's something about 20 years. Well, the Beatles did it, for example. And I felt the need somehow to do something. So what I did was I turned on my computer in the usual sort of way, and I just emailed everyone I could think of, right, either whose email addresses I still had, or that I could find through cunning Google searches. And I just let everyone know that it was 20 years ago, and I have such happy memories of everything, and I hope you're all well. And I got some lovely responses. These included from people I'd stayed in touch with, but also from some people who I hadn't been in touch with so much over the over the years. And there were some really nice comments, and I just want to mention one of them. It was from someone who is here today. It's from Robin Osborne, who spoke at the original event. And he said to me that he wondered what, 20 years on, we would say, would we give the same kind of papers? Would we do something different? And that made me think it would be so nice to have some kind of reunion. Now, this was already November, so it was too late to do something 20 years after the conference. But I thought, well, 2017, I was in 2007 there, 2017, that's something that sounds realistic. And it sounded quite a long way off in November 2014. But I did wonder whether sort of other projects would have got in the way. And then something really lovely happened, namely that Jose, who you all know already, either via email relationship and now hopefully personally as well. He came here from Lisbon, already with quite a lovely amount of conference organising under his belt as a master's student. Came here to do a PhD on a topic that's, that is not irrelevant to this one, and he took it on. He took on the organising, and I think that is incredibly appropriate. Not only because he's great, and somehow so calm, which I don't think I was back in 1994, though maybe I pretended I was, and he has very much made this happen, and I think it's wonderful. He's managed to secure lots of funding, for example. He's managed to get everyone here, even get things filmed, etc. And I think that's he's had expressions of interest from publishers, so there's a potential for doing something really interesting coming out of this. Also, when Karen and I organised the original event, we were postgraduate students. We were postgraduate students, and it's, I think, so appropriate that it's a postgraduate student that has organised this event as well. I've been honoured to help, but it's Jose that's made it happen, and I think that's just wonderful and so appropriate. Okay, so as I said, I'd missed any opportunity to do anything in 2014, but I did think that it would be great, this is my next prop here, to do something to mark the 20th anniversary of the book coming out. Originally like this, with no picture on the cover. And I'll come back to that perhaps in a little bit. And there's one more, yes, so there's the fact that we were both postgraduate students, and so one stimulus was Robin's comment. But another thing that has sort of stayed with me for some years is one of the early-ish reviews that we had of the book. It was in Classical Review, and it was by James Davidson. And in his review, he summed up various things that he felt the book had achieved, which was rather nice. And one of the things he stressed was that one of the most important things about the book was that it existed, okay? That it had opened up a particular topic, a sensitive topic, a perhaps under-discussed topic previously, to further debate. And what James Davidson also wrote in that review is something that's stayed with me over the years, namely that he wondered what, he talked about what we'd achieved with the first collection, and he wondered what the second collection would be like. I've thought over the years, wouldn't it be nice to do another collection? And now we potentially have that opportunity, so that's really, really special. So he was saying this as early as 2000. And now we have the perspective of all these additional years to reflect on as well. So what I want to do now is to turn to some of the things that we were doing with the book and before that with the conference. And I want to explore some of the turns that have happened since, showing some ways in which I think the topic has moved on. I'm not trying to cover everything. I just want to sort of throw a few things out there. Not least just to sort of get us thinking as we move into the main papers. The first of these is the topic itself. namely, like, what exactly is it? Now, for a start, the book actually had two titles. This was the idea of the publisher, okay, Anton Powell, who was very supportive of the project. So, Rape in Antiquity, yeah, and then the subtitle, but also an alternative title, Sexual Violence in the Greek and Roman Worlds. Okay. So already there are these two titles, and that's something I might come back to a little later. So already there were these two key concepts: rape on the one hand and sexual violence on the other. Also, is antiquity necessary? So is rape the same as sexual violence? Is antiquity the same as the Greek and Roman worlds? That's something that itself has been bothering me over the years. Now, I would say that the perspective we were coming from back in the 90s was that there was some kind of concept in antiquity of rape, and that it was our role in order to investigate various aspects of it. So that, I think, was the key thing we were trying to do in '94, and what we were also trying to do in the earlier event, the smaller scale event in Swansea in '93. But very early on, this is something that got challenged. And this was included in, I think, the very first review I saw of the book. It was by Edward Harris, who is also here today, which is super lovely. And it was in a review in an online journal, so I haven't brought it along. I could have brought along a printout, or I suppose I could have called it up on there. But anyway, happy to supply links if you want them. And what Edward said there is that this was a mostly good book, it says some nice things about it, on a non-existent topic, okay, which was both sort of shocking and wonderful at the same time. And this certainly reflects something that I've been struck by since the early to mid 1990s, namely that there's been a shift. Okay, and this shift has certainly informed my own work from rape as a topic, rape in antiquity as a topic, to rape followed by a question mark, okay? Not least to engage with the issue that, of how problematic it potentially is to apply our concepts, problematic and varied though they are, of rape, to the ancient world. Is that a problem? Especially where, as Edward and others have said, there was no term that corresponds, or at least no term that corresponds in any straightforward way to what we would define and conceptualize as rape. So one approach, one shift, is to trouble, I suppose, whether it's viable even to be using the term rape in relation to the ancient world. And this is something that various people very interestingly addressed in their responses to the call for papers. So I see this as something we can potentially keep discussing over the next couple of days. So there's this issue then of whether there is a thing, whether this event, like the original one, is on a non-existent topic, and what that therefore means. Then there's the issue of, whether there is a topic, but there's also the issue of what aspects of the topic we covered or didn't cover back in the 90s. Now, needless to say, we weren't seeking to cover everything. We could see from the 93 event that there's a lot of interest. We had the makings of a conference already. And we put out a call for papers, and we were blown away by the responses to that call for papers. Needless to say, as I said, we weren't seeking to cover everything, and we were very aware that there were plenty of areas that we didn't cover, but there were also other areas that didn't strike us at the time, that have only emerged as potential things that might be addressed as the years have moved on. And I'm going to mention just a few of those here, and these include things that people who responded to the call for papers very much addressed. One of those is, pause to have some water. One of those is Ovid, the O word. That's one thing we were accused. Ovid is one thing we were accused of leaving out. There was certainly some Ovid in the book. There was no discrete chapter on Ovid. It's not as though we had an idea for a topic and then commissioned people to write on various aspects. We put out a call for papers. We responded to the energy of that, both for the event and for the book. But in James Arrietty's paper, and James Arrietty is here today as well, over from Virginia, in his chapter on Livy, which grew out of a paper at the conference, and also in Corinne Saunders on rape in the Middle Ages, Ovid keeps being returned to, but there was no discrete study. So I'm aware that's a gap, and that's something we can potentially, fill over the next couple of days. Okay, so one is Ovid. Another is warfare. I was once quite taken aback to be reading a rather interesting article on wartime rape in Antiquity, for Karen and I to be accused, along with an array of other scholars, for almost like being involved in some conspiracy to avoid discussing, so almost like to marginalise or even ignore wartime rape in the ancient world. Just as the ancients often did, as this particular article was arguing. So that I think what she was arguing was that as classical scholars, we've been perhaps perpetuating an ancient tendency. And I got quite angry about that, saying, no, we weren't. If someone had offered a paper and it was good enough on wartime rape, we would have included it. But I think this might say something about how now in the early 21st century, maybe there couldn't not be more on warfare and wartime rape. Perhaps that reflects how wartime sexual violence has come on in the wake of things like conflict studies, etc., etc. And it also reflects how warfare in antiquity has moved on as a subject for study. And I am struck that war did form a backdrop of much of what we wrote about. For example, Lucy Burns' paper on the Seven Against Thebes was very much about how female experience is represented in a city under siege. The paper that I gave that then sort of grew into the book chapter was about the potential vulnerability of a warlike goddess. But it is a gap, and that's something that would be very nice to address. So Ovid, warfare, and now theory. Just if things weren't getting big enough. Now, various theoretical models did inform certain of the papers that were delivered at the conference and also those that grew into book chapters. But there wasn't all that much in the way of attempts to frame ancient evidence in relationship to particular methods and to particular theories. There were some exceptions here. There's someone who very sadly is missed, Keith Hopwood, who was also my PhD supervisor. At the event, he used Susan Brown-Miller's foundational 1970s study of rape in order to frame what he was looking at in relation to late antiquity. He'd have loved this event. He died quite a few years ago now, and he's very much missed, and his presence, for me at least, is very much missed, given how supportive he was of the event and how he was also, there as a supporter and also a contributor. So he, for example, used Brown-Miller, but there was perhaps less theoretical engagement than, there was less theoretical engagement than perhaps there would be now, maybe 20 plus years on. And this is something that I've been reflecting on, not least since I read the review by James Davidson in Classical Review for 2000, where he reviewed our book as part of a review article that looked at several books that came out more or less at the same time, including one on Foucault and classics. So there you have the contrast between our book, which he thought was very important, not least for just opening up the subject as an area of inquiry, and that book that was very much trying to tackle the potential for Foucault to inform and maybe, transform classics. But since then, there certainly have been all sorts of developments in uses of theory and uses of methods to inform a study of rape. Highlights, I would say, here include Rosanna Omotowuju's book. Rosanna was at the conference and contributed the book, and she's here today as well, which is super lovely. Her book that came out in 2002, was it? Where's she gone? Where's Rosanna? Yes, sounds about right. Yeah, early 2000s, looked amongst other things at feminist theory and how that can be used to inform rape in Mananda and in oratory. I've had to go along with my colleague. I've done a lot of work with my colleague Fiona McHardy. She'd love to be here. She's at Awards and Progressions right now, somewhere else on campus, in another big room. So she can't be here at the moment. Hopefully she'll be able to pop in at some point over the next couple of days. But with Fiona, I've had a go at framing a study of sexual coercion, sexual violence, rape, in relation to psychological theories of rape. So I've been trying to have a go at doing that myself, and that's something I very much intend to continue doing. Okay, so another big thing I want to talk about that was discussed at the conference, but not as much as perhaps it would be now, is late antiquity. Now Keith, who I just mentioned, of course, Keith Hopwood's paper was on a late antique topic. And I think he would have welcomed the wealth of proposals we had on aspects of late antiquity. And I think this very much reflects how this aspect of the ancient world is very much coming in from the margins. So it's great that there's going to be a late antiquity presence at this event. I think that's very important. I wish there'd been more of it 20 plus years ago, but at least there was some. Okay, so these are all quite big things, and I've got just two more quickly to deal with. One is reception. Okay, reception. The classical reception studies, the classical reception revolution even, hadn't really got going back in 94 or 97. And as several people said in the abstracts that they proposed for this event, this was something that we didn't make much of back then, but I think that reflects how things were back in the 90s. And this change is going to be reflected in papers at this event, and I think that's very, very appropriate. When the book was obviously sold enough, it came out a few years later in paperback, very, very different, no picture, very striking picture. And I love the way that Duckworth, who brought this edition out, Duckworth, well, that sounds like a name from the past already, doesn't it? I was impressed at how they were able to produce a beautiful cover like this. But I also felt uncomfortable about it for various reasons, not least because is it representing the horror of rape, or is it in some ways sanitizing it, or legitimizing it because of the weight of the classical tradition? It's something that really bothered me. And also, I thought this ongoing concern about books that are about antiquity, okay, using a post-classical image in order to illustrate the book. And I think now things have changed. If there is a reception presence, it won't just be as a sort of pretty picture to illustrate and grab the attention of potential readers. It will be reflecting just how far the study of reception is very much in from the margins and very much part of classics as it now is. As you've seen, the hardback edition didn't have a picture, and that maybe seemed right at the time. And I would hope that any book that comes out of this event will have a beautiful cover, perhaps one not least linked with José's gorgeous posters for this for this event. And I wonder, does this mean that we're now ready to confront visual images of rape? Or does it mean that we've become desensitized? I don't know, but one thing I keep coming back to is that perhaps this cover was the more appropriate one. But back in the day, I did argue for something else, but anyway. Okay, and this takes me to one final point. The very last thing I want to talk about is another potential gap, and that is pedagogy. And Mike sort of anticipated this. You've anticipated my closing point. So another thing that has emerged over the past few years that I've been reflecting on is how in the classroom, and I've done it in this very classroom even, we should teach sensitive subjects, potentially sensitive, potentially traumatic subjects, including rape. So Fiona can't be here, but I brought along a book that she edited a few years ago along with Nancy Rabinovich on addressing difficult topics in the classics classroom. It gives all sorts of tips on how you can really sort of deal with sensitive subjects and use them as an opportunity to really sort of enrich the students' experience and indeed to support students who might be troubled by what they study, by what they learn. And I've done some work over the years in how subjects like rape can be very traumatic for students, but for other students, not at all. And in fact, you never necessarily know what students are going to find difficult. Sometimes it's things that might completely shock you because it's so unexpected, which makes giving sort of trigger warnings so problematic. And that's something we've also done some work on. Now, I don't think, from memory, that anybody in papers today or tomorrow is explicitly going to discuss aspects of pedagogy, though it might be something we can engage in a more informal conversation about. But this is something that I would maybe like to think about for a follow-up event. I keep thinking it'd be really nice to do something in Cardiff, for instance. So maybe something on pedagogy of ancient sexual violence is something we could explore. But anyway, that's something potentially for the future. Right now, I want to get back to this event. As I said already, Jose, I think, has done wonders with this, including securing funding, and being just such a dedicated correspondent with so many different people. So there are two threads, in some ways. There's the reunion of those who took part in conference, book, etc. back in the 90s. And then all these wonderful other voices, including those who might have been a bit too young to come to an event back in 1994. And I can leave the various books I brought along here in case people want to have a look at any of them. Don't forget, maybe some of you will know this, we have a Twitter hashtag, if you want to let the world know what we're doing, and some people have already been doing that already today. It's RiA, between capital R, small I, capital A, that probably doesn't matter, 2017, so not 17, 2017. That's it, isn't it? Yes, with the hashtag before it. Yeah. So if you want to let the world know what we're doing, that would be lovely. Well, let me just say again, welcome. Welcome to Roehampton. I'm not going to leave the stage completely because I'm now going to chair the first session. But thank you all for coming. It's just so lovely to have you here. Thank you.